Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ADHD Eavesdrop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. Today, we have Dr. Brad, and Dr. Brad is a passionate caregiver with a deep tool chest of decades of research, studies, and clinical application of functional medicine in restoring health to those with chronic illness. His compassionate understanding comes from years of his own struggles from chronic illness, and the Lord giving him the tools to help himself and others get free from the prison of ongoing sickness. He has been there, he cares, and he walks with you in the process. Welcome, Dr. Brad.
Thanks for the invite.
Glad to have you. So, chronic illness. There's a lot of chronic illness. Tell me a little bit about what areas you work with.
All of them.
And so do you consider ADHD a chronic illness?
It doesn't resolve unless you deal with it, and you can resolve it pretty well if you understand it. Most people are just throwing some kind of therapy at symptoms, and that doesn't really help anybody out. It just gives them a whole bunch of whatever your favorite therapy is. So, my real specialty is candida leaky gut. That allowed us to be one of the most effective, probably in the world, with Lyme disease. We've had people that are so debilitated they can't walk, can't talk, can't think, can't work, can't get out of bed, can't walk from the bedroom to the bathroom, and we get them well, healthy, and back on their feet again. So the whole gamut. ADHD is kind of fun to work with.
Yeah? Tell me
Yeah.
more. Fun how?
Okay. Well, I'll give you this story. I thought, this is a good where to start. I did an evaluation on a mom and her 6-year-old daughter a little while ago. 6-year-old daughter's got the diagnosis of ADHD. They feed her toxic food at school, and they want to put her on the Ritalin and all that. They drove for hours to get here. This girl with ADHD, 6 years old, she sits in my office, just small little room down there, and go over everything. 4 hours. She's sitting there content, completely focused, working on schoolwork, doing coloring, playing games, just hanging out, quiet, content. And I look at the parents and I go, this girl doesn't have ADHD. There's no way. They can't do what she does right now, and this is classic of what creates ADHD. It's generally toxic food, toxic diet, lots of sugar, a really messed up gut that doesn't digest properly, spilling all kinds of toxins over. The brain gets inflamed, and s- somebody's feeding them toxic food, and they can't sit still. They can't focus. Their mind's going 100 miles an hour because of all this inflammation and toxic food and energy.
So what do you recommend for people with ADHD?
Well, let's talk about what causes it.
Okay, let's talk about.
When you look at any kind of a problem, the first you got to recognize that there is a problem. But once a problem gets set down in front of you, if you don't figure out the parameters of a problem, you can never resolve anything, right? Now, years ago, my son was about 2 weeks from taking his college entrance exam. All my kids were homeschooled. He wasn't even a third the way through his math, and math's a big thing. He was trying to get into engineering. I literally told me to leave work early on Friday. We finished off the Unit 5, his 13-unit book. I got up from the table that night, got up from the table, I picked it up, walked over to the garbage can and said, "You'll never see this piece of junk again. This is worthless." Woke him up the next morning. We did math. We did math for another day and a half. So 2 days total, we did 3/4 of a year of math. And he used 4 pieces of scratch paper. That was all. I wouldn't let him write stuff down. I made him talk through everything. And he starts off ripping something off. He's writing all this stuff, and they go, "What are you writing?" That has nothing to do with the problem. You know, you look at ADHD or any health issue, if you can't define the problem, there's no way to talk about a solution, right?
Absolutely, I agree. Yes, you have to define what you're talking about in the first place.
Yeah. So let's look at the biggest pool of that type of a thing. We actually have two pools of that go on. The military is really huge with that, and young children are really huge with that. The military is basically it's set up because of a extremely poor diet that's not balanced, it doesn't have the nutrients they need in extremely stressful situations. Growing up's pretty stressful. And when you look at the children that have ADHD, autism is close to that, is kind of associated. Their guts are always a mess. I mean, a complete toxic mess. And they're, if you talk to anybody with ADHD, they all got major digestive issues. And their diet's generally not all that good either. So you have this perfect storm brewing inside. And if we understand what the gut does, it's really, really kind of an amazing thing. We have four detox organs in our body. Most people think there's only one, but the gut has three out of the four. It's the small intestinal wall, the colon wall, and the microbiota, the microbial coating called the flora inside of the gut. Those are three of the four detox organs. The liver only deals with what spills out of the gut. Oh, and over half the immune system is in the gut because most of the toxicity we develop happens inside of the gut. So it's kind of an amazing thing. When you look at the gut lining, if you hold your fingers up in front of your face, your fingers represent the lining of the gut. The fingers represent microvilli. That increases the surface area of the gut about 400 times. It's crazy huge. It goes from about 6 square feet to the size of a tennis court just because of your fingers.
Well, and like, not to be redundant, but the intestines are huge to begin with.
They're what?
Huge.
Yeah, about 30 feet long in the average adult.
Yeah, that's all.
So when you look at problems that go on inside the gut, some inflammatory issue makes those microvilli start to atrophy. And it's like you close your hand into a fist and you so you just look at your knuckles. And the gut wall can change from your fingers extended to just looking at your knuckles in 24 hours of any kind of inflammatory response. And we've got all these mechanisms that do that. You got antibiotics do it, NSAIDs like your aspirin, Motrin, Aleve. You've got antibiotics do it. You have steroids do it. Antifungals do it. Long-term stress, food intolerance, anything that causes inflammation causes this atrophy. The microvilli, they excrete this mucus coating, and it's in that mucus coating that fills the space in between the microvilli caps over the top or where all the microbes live. When that atrophies and goes down to like this, there's not much space to build mucus anymore. No place for the microbes to hide. They all wash down the toilet, and the pathogens grow. Candida is probably the biggest one that's out there, and it creates a super toxin called acetaldehyde. It's 7 times more toxic than formaldehyde embalming fluid.
And we're walking around with that in our gut.
Right. Yeah. And acetaldehyde, it kills your dopamine producing nerves, which makes you so you can't feel good. Oh, that's part of the ADHD thing is you got all these things going on. Food intolerance is a huge part of this also. And what typically happens is every case I've seen for a lot of years. I'm in the tail end of 4 decades of working with people. So, you got thousands of people, and that's a lot of years, and I've done a ton of research. I've not ever seen a case of ADHD or autism, any of those so-called childhood problems that are out there, that doesn't have this just seriously pathological gut and extremely pathological flora that's in there. The So once that starts to atrophy like that, the gut opens up all these spaces. We're supposed to absorb all our nutrients through the cell lining, which is only one cell layer thick, not in between it, but through it. When that inflammation happens, the spaces between the cells open up, and it just lets Mack trucks of toxicity get right into the bloodstream. And that dumps straight into the liver. The liver gets too overwhelmed. That goes systemic, goes throughout the entire body. And outside of the gut and the liver, we don't have anything that detoxifies at any efficiency whatsoever. The toxins try and get out of the skin and the lungs. That's where your asthma and rashes come from. And it stores in fat. Well, guess what the brain's made out of? It's 60% water. 1% dehydration will give you all the symptoms of dementia. After water is 60% fats. Of those fats, 60% of that should be fish oils. And you think about diet, just right there. You think about what people with ADHD are doing with their diet. Oh, where's the fish oils coming from?
Yeah, so you're saying I have fish oil in my brain?
All of us do. Not scales, not fish scales, but fish oil. And it's this lack. Okay, and when you have the pathological microbes in the gut, they're the ones that do most of the digestion. 'Cause the food can't even touch the microvilli. It's filled with mucus and all that. It's all the microbes that go up, grab the nutrients, bring it back down, and everything lives together. Same thing happens with roots and plants in the soil. Exact same thing. So, and they don't want to put that in science books. Go figure. People don't like the idea of bugs growing inside of them, but we're full of them. There
Well, yeah, I mean, we're infested, aren't we?
pretty much,
We
pretty much. There's more microbes in the gut than there are human cells in the rest of the body. So
I believe that.
by a big margin, really big margin. So we've got all these things going on that bypass our normal systems of dealing with toxicity and all that. It gets inside of the brain and just inflames the brain. Toxicity is the key thing that dysregulates almost every metabolic function. But with there's this thing called leaky gut, and that happens one of two ways. The inflammatory issues open up the spaces between the cells, and things go in between the cells. Toxins, microbes, undigested food particles and all that. That's one way it happens. And the other way it happens is this autoimmune response from all the toxicity in the gut lining blows holes in it where you could basically drive something like a school bus full of toxicity through these holes all the time. As soon as a gut starts to leak, within 2 hours the brain leaks. And the opposite happens too. If the brain leaks from some kind of trauma, like a concussion or something like that, within 2 hours, the gut's leaking too. They're very closely tied and interacted. There's a nervous system in the gut, there's cell signaling, there's signals coming off the microbial lining. We've got all this dynamic interactions going on. And so you got these little kids who fidget all over the place because their brain's on fire. Basically, that's what it is. And they have no idea why that's the case. And they don't teach these things in medical school. They don't teach these things in any school that produces doctors. So alternative or medical, they don't teach the stuff in any of that. I got all this stuff written in the book that I wrote and published. It's Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness. A lot on how the body works and all that. But this is what's going on inside of the brain. And the, you'll hear little children, young children say, "My brain's on fire." Literally feels just like their brain's on fire. And if we throw a lot of the things that people do to pacify, like it's such a common thing for some male to give his female sweetheart chocolates, right? It's a pretty common thing.
Well, I
And
hope so, because I really like chocolate, so
yeah, I mean, it's really funny because chocolates, it's really high in caffeine and it dysregulates your hormones. And if guys knew that, they wouldn't do that. And it's really interesting with things like caffeine. If you have it first thing in the morning, you can handle it the best. The later it gets in the day, the worse that it is. And you take these young children, they go to school, they're pacified by these candies, all candies made from corn syrup and white sugar. Combinations of those two things. Those are some of the most toxic things on earth. They're not top of the list, but they're just barely below the top. And all that does is it furthers all these fires. And nobody connects the dots of what's going on. If they gave them something healthy like an apple.
So how do you address the ADHD kid who's raised with a really healthy diet and
I've not seen that. Okay. I've not seen that, but
and then the counter of that is then why doesn't everybody have ADHD? Because we're all dumping junk into ourselves.
pretty much we have created this inflammatory fire from marketing, from food supplies, all kinds of different issues. And if you understood what's going on, it's like, oh my God, how can anybody even survive? There's not a bubble big enough for all of us to hang out in, and we have to interact somehow. And there's no joy in life in a bubble, and all that. But there's practicalities with all kinds of different things, and when you take somebody with ADHD and you clean the diet up, that's about half the battle. But you got to fix the gut too, and that's difficult. They're, the gut's the hardest thing to heal in the body that I know of. We've had women in their 80s that have been on thyroid meds for decades get off of those, and their thyroids get healed up, and people have had surgeries, and they start functioning, producing again. But the gut doesn't, you really got to do a lot because there's so many things going on and it's so vulnerable all the time. So cleaning up the diet is part of it. You got to really fix the gut wall too to do that. And as you do that, the ADHD, it just goes away.
So then you contend that ADHD is not a neurological uh, disorder as much as a gut and inflammation issue.
What the symptom occurs inside the brain, but the root problem that's causing it is toxic diet with a toxic gut and a really poor flora that instead of digest food ferments and rots it,
Okay.
and an overwhelmed detox system on top of that. And as soon as you resolve that, ADHD goes away.
Okay. So then, and I'm a semantics person. So then I'm like, well, then ADHD is not, it's ADHD is a symptom of gut health issues, is what you're saying, as opposed to ADHD being a genetic neurological disorder per se.
Have you ever heard of the word epigenetics?
No, do tell.
Okay. Epigenetics is this fascinating study. I was on Alignable a while ago, and that's what one older gentleman that I got in this side chat with, that was his specialty. It's really kind of an amazing thing. But epigenetics is a study on what how lifestyle affects the genetic expression. This is a mind blower. Every gene that we have has a potential of 30,000 different ways to express itself. How we live determines which one of those expressions actually happens. You can have a Down's child, somebody with all of those issues, who you get mom on a pretty high dose of active folate all the way from their pregnancy through nursing and through their growing up, and they'll very manifest very little symptoms of the Downs. You we've got all these things that they want to pawn off as a diagnosis of some genetic issue. Do you know what a diagnosis is,
Uh,
technically?
Essentially, yeah, you just fit a set of things like symptoms. Like, here you go, you got all these symptoms, so it must be this diagnosis, right?
A diagnosis, literally, actually, functionally, is an insurance code for a doctor to be able to bill and charge. It has no relative bearing on what's going on inside of you and no connection to causation whatsoever. It just allows them to bill an insurance company.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
So that's a
absolutely.
mind blower for most people. But
Right. Well, and that kind of, because I have a history in education and special education, and I used to kind of along those lines is it doesn't matter what you call it. It's the services aren't going to change. It's like we don't need to come
exactly,
up with fancy names for it. We just need to service the student based on their needs. So that
exactly.
kind of brought that up for me.
Right. And essentially the servicing of a student with ADHD is meds to kind of knock them out and try and reduce the symptoms. It's never to deal with the cause.
But yeah, no, because educationally, we're not gonna be like, that's a physiological thing that, like, what we do is try to teach them strategies and coping mechanisms, right? But, like, what you would like to see, and I'm guessing you would like to see is maybe, like, changes in diet at
Yeah.
school, right? Like, instead of having, these foods, they have these foods, and they could be part of their IEP. Look at me, I'm getting all excited. As part of their IEP, they could have these things for lunch.
Yeah. You just put them on a whole food diet, balanced protein, balanced oils.
So
Eh,
whole food, balanced proteins, balanced oils, and I have to ask you about this because you brought up the fish oil thing, and I hear it go back and forth, that taking fish oil in a tablet or in a gel cap form is not going to do anything for you. You need to eat fish.
Tell you why that comes out. First of all, if we used to feed our cat canned salmon, but they cook canned food to death and the oils are worthless. So that doesn't work. If you overcook your fish, that doesn't work. You got to cook it just right, just till it's done, not overdone, just till it's done, and that's the reality. The studies show that 75% of the fish oil on the market is rancid before you ever buy it.
That's lovely.
Yeah. If it's not in the refrigerator, it has no prayer of doing its job. You look at, you ever get some buckwheat pancake mix?
Yeah, that stuff sticks to to your ribs, man.
Okay, but you notice the little black dots in it, and it's always bitter? That's rancid oils.
Okay.
When you crack a seed of a grain, those oils are starting to go rancid within 3 hours at room temperature. I make my own flour, have for probably 30 years, and a quarter of my flour is buckwheat. It's sweet, it's smooth, it's creamy color. There's never a black dot in it because I store all my flour in the freezer. I grind it. I grind like 3 gallons at a time, put a put them in hefty storage Ziploc bags are the cleanest storage bags out there, or some silicone bags and store that in the freezer. It just gets pulled out when it gets used, stays in the freezer for that. That's one of those examples of that We test supplements all of the time. In the companies that I use with the distributors and all that, I'm one in like a $300,000 doctor pool from all these companies. I'm the only one that anyone in those companies knows that tests every supplement on everybody, and I can tell when they change their formula. I can tell specifically what ingredient they changed and what its source is. I'm the only one in over $300,000. So, and we're always testing. My wife and I will make field trips. We'll go to health food stores or whatever, and we'll just test all their calcium, all their fish oil. Somebody will have their favorite company that they use, and we'll test just a slew of those for a while. And so how many fish oils and floras worse than fish oil? But right now, I only know of 2 fractions of fish oil that have any value to even buy in North America. And we've probably tested hundreds. It's the same thing with flora. There's like 5 times the flora supplements there are fish oil. And I don't know how many hundreds of flora we've tested. There's 2 in North America that work good enough to
Are you going to tell us what they are?
The only way you can get them is through somebody like me, and you can get them through my website or something like that. You can't go to the store and buy them.
So we're not going to Amazon and picking these suckers up.
You never want to buy anything nutritional from Amazon. You want to know why? Most of the things on there are bootleg products. Oh, years ago, Metagenics was one of the companies that we used a lot of their product. They were one of the premier companies in North America. That was sold, somebody else took it over, they've made a bunch of compromises, and their products are not even usable anymore. But back when they got so tired of the Amazon scamming going on, they hired 2 people in that company. In the first 30 days they were in that company, they shut down 6,000 bootleg sites on Amazon selling Metagenics products. 6,000 in 30 days.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can't keep up with that kind of stuff, right?
No, you should never buy anything nutritional off Amazon. It's all
good
from
to know.
Alibaba. It's from China. It's cheap junk. They're good at copycatting, but there's no relative value in a lot of the product. And what is good is almost always expired. So never, ever, ever, ever get anything nutritional from Amazon. And you look menstrual cups like the Diva cups, Moon cups. Those are a wonderful thing for women. Those are all bootleg too. You just don't get health stuff from Amazon. Just don't.
Just don't do it. Just
Don't do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Put that as our little thumbnail. Don't do it. Don't buy medicine from Amazon.
Yeah, I've got a headshot. It's like, nah. And, it's pretty funny, but that's just a reality. And I've been around long enough to know it. We test people to get it. People think they're going to shortcut what we do, and I got the lowest markup of anybody I know as far as my products go, and I can't sell them because it's under the MSRP, and if I try and promote that and sell it, I wouldn't be able to keep it anymore. So, it's just quiet, and it's just sold to individuals as far as that goes. But how things are stored, how things are shipped, how they're kept in a store before you get it, and what you do with delivery all has everything to do with everything. Like you take your water issues, a lot of people do bottled water. Those typically tend to be good through the winter into spring. And once you get into the hot summer months where you got some of these storage places are way over 100 degrees inside, the heat lets the plastic impregnate all the toxic stuff into the water, and the water's too toxic to even use. If you try to put a fish in it, it'd probably kill the fish, something along that line. And it's those are things that people don't ever think about. We test that kind of thing all of the time. And we got to figure out, why did this used to be good and why isn't it good anymore? And those are huge, huge, huge factors. If it's not kept refrigerated from manufacturer all the way to you and you put it in the refrigerator, then you take things like fish oil and flora, they're worthless.
Gotcha. Well, we have had a great conversation, Dr. Brad.
Yeah.
It
I,
goes so fast. It's like, oh my gosh, it's already after 30 minutes. I can't believe it. But I always like to make sure that you get a chance to put in like a last word. And I usually ask one more question of my guests. But today I'm going to not ask a question as much as I'm going to offer you a platform to give a message that you would like to give to the parents of kids with ADHD.
couple real simple things. Get them off of sugar. Sugar's just toxic, and it turns brain on fire. Get packaged foods and packaged meals and microwave them, because those are just not that good. If it doesn't look like real food, don't feed it to them. If it doesn't look like it grew off a plant or a tree, don't give it to them. I've got a really good tool for anybody. We talked about epigenetics earlier. Epigenetics. I've got a free book on my website, hello.healthfullyu.com. That book is some very simple steps you can do to change your epigenetics. So it just changes your life, changes your destiny. And that's a really huge tool. There's like 7 different things you can do to really change your genetic expression in that. And that's a huge tool. If changing diet doesn't get there, get a hold of me, because it's fun working with kids. It really is. And you bring them back for those health issues, and their brain's not on fire. You finally have a child again. And, that's a very emotional thing. People we work with, they graduate. And one of the things for parents with children with like autism and ADHD, their graduation is they get a child back. The child
That's
they
it.
always wanted.
So we will have the link for your website in the details below. So if people want to go download that book, which go down and download that book and read it, that'll all be in the details. So I just want to thank you again, Dr. Brad. A lot of good information. My brain is still absorbing it.
Yeah, I told you we're going to have a conversation. It's not like what you generally have.
I really appreciate you coming on and telling me your perspective, and giving some real information. So just thank
Yeah.
you so much for all the information that you brought. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome.
And for our butterflies on the wall, if they enjoyed our stories or our content, we want them to subscribe and follow and do all the fun stuff. And we want them to ask questions if they have questions or comments. We want them to get that in there too. So in the meantime, we'll see you next time.